Hello there, adventurer. Welcome back to the recap of the Quest of Desolation. In this session, we will be recapping the events of Chapter 16, largely based in the Plane of Chaos, and the last episode of Chapter 16 being sprawled across Aelithia. Without further ado, let's jump into our recap of the Quest of Desolation, Chapter 16, The Destroyer and the Desolate. The glorious bastards arrive in the Plane of Chaos, landing across a wild and unknown terrain. Dense fog surrounds this area as land bridges sprawl out across the horizon in every direction, twisting and turning and branching at random points. Gravity seems to operate in tandem, with whichever side of these strange bridges are covered in a soft green algae or moss, which is not how gravity should be. It becomes increasingly obvious that magic does not operate properly here, and that it follows strange effects. It seems that wild magic explosions are a common event, and these land bridges, which they come to know as the Green Belt, spontaneously explode and reform into new and equally confusing rock bridges. Like a spiderweb that stretches out for miles, our heroes face a challenge of not having any warning to the sudden destruction of any given bridge. It comes to a point where they stumble across a small clearing where a humanoid like statue seems to be standing and staring off in the distance. As we get closer, the statue springs to life, explaining that it is a waypoint copy of the great wizard Mordenkainen, who explored this realm many years ago and left copies of himself scattered across it as guides and warnings. Asking plenty of questions, our party ultimately learns that the chaos takes many forms and that anything can happen if they aren't cautious. But, on a good note, we also learn that Azure, the endless goddess of chaos, resides within a different region of this plane, an area known as the Broken Cliffs. We push through the dense fog more, following the bridges as they go. Our party walks until it is night, where they now must rest on the land bridge with no other choice. Though the night is peaceful, they awake with small green caterpillars, or similar creatures, crawling about. Trixie and Kualias choose to pick them up, and the party takes some interest in them. Our heroes learn that these caterpillars spontaneously duplicate magically, so they carry them along their journey across the twists and turns of the Greenbelt. It is all fine until one of the caterpillars crawls into Trixie's ear and assumes control over her body. The rest of the party realizes that these caterpillars are in fact parasitic. Trixie, now being controlled by this bug, begins to bleed and her eyes go white and then bloodshot red, signifying that she is quickly succumbing to lethal side effects. Acting quickly, our heroes attempt to cure Trixie, but to no avail. Trixie ends up hurling her body off of one of the land bridges, saved only by Nyx catching her before she hits her head face first onto solid stone ground after a tremendous fall. Trixie regains consciousness shortly thereafter and is healed, though she has no recollection of the events that happened, and the parasite seems to now be gone. Laying on the ground, a lizard-like creature pokes its head up from the stone of the broken cliffs, and then it attacks Trixie. A horde of these small creatures all poke their head up from the surrounding crevices, all hostile and beginning to swarm the party. While the creatures prove very weak, they do cause plenty of magical chaos and generate wild effects across the area. But when the party finally makes it away from these creatures, they once again find purchase and rest on these large and fragmented cliffsides. The following day, our heroes stumble upon yet another copy of the great wizard Mordenkainen, who advises them that Azure lives not only in the Broken Cliffs, but upon the highest ridge of such a place, in a building known as the Fractured Manor. Our party spends the rest of the day looking, eventually finding the structure, though it looks to be largely abandoned and heavily weathered. Large portions of the old castle manor are destroyed or missing entirely, and no one seems to be home. Our party takes another rest, and eventually, Trixie wakes up hearing a familiar phrase. "Hello there, silly rabbit." Finally meeting Azure face to face, Trixie and the rest of the party learn that Decohn, a brother of Lycree and Azure, once came through here millennia ago. He cut a hole in the fabric of space-time and entered a place called the Void. Over time, according to Azure, matter wells have leaked out and created an entity known as the Heart. To provide some guidance, Azure summons or creates, not really sure how that happened, a individual named Rylan. Now accompanied by this companion, our heroes depart the fractured manor and further the broken cliffs, and enter the entropic waste, an expansive desert ravaged by intense chaos storms and wild magic surges. For the first couple of 100 feet or so, all is going smoothly, but when Atlasia tries to cast a spell, drastic consequences take hold. A three-dimensional maze of playing cards unfurls, trapping the party in what seems to be an infinite labyrinth. But to their dismay, they have a bigger problem. Nyx's pan flute, which disappeared due to the wild magic surge effects when they first arrived in the Broken Cliffs, suddenly falls from the sky, though it is much more massive than it was previously, like an asteroid crashing into the desert. The half-mile long bamboo pipes kick up a powerful dust storm that races across the desert in every direction. Stuck in the card maze, our party has no choice but to hunker down and hope for the best. More chaotic effects cause Nyx and Aelithia to temporarily land in the ancient city of Culdenhide at the coronation ceremony of High Magus Tizandium, who the party now better recognizes as present-day Archlet Tizaktic. As the card maze, returning to the main time, is swept away upon their return, the entire party plummets hundreds of feet into the actual sands of the desert below. Scattered across the area by powerful winds, our party quickly recovers and reacts to take cover. But Trixie and Urigar unfortunately get stuck out in the storm. Trixie buries herself, but Urigar isn't so lucky, getting struck by chaos lightning that fractures his very personality into fractal aspects of himself, each now vying for a portion of control over Urigar. As the storms pass, however, our party recuperates and continues their journey across the desert sands. Passing by the gigantic panflute, our party walks for further days, evading the megapedes that prowl the desert, giant insectoid creatures. Eventually, the desert ends abruptly, and our party enters the flipped forest, an upside down forest in which dead trees grow downwards from overhead and chaos vines abound at every corner. Picking up some of the chaos roots and suffering the wild magic effects of such, our party is ambushed by wraithroot trees, similar to tree ants but fueled by necrotic energy. After a quick scuffle, our party fends off the trees and heads further into the forest, knowing that the Heart lies somewhere ahead, and guided by the somewhat unreliable Rylan, it remains to be seen the path that sits before us. Continuing through the flipped forest, Varen decides to take off after Kualias after he leaves to scout out ahead. The rest of our group continues onward and eventually arrives at a dark sandy shoreline of some kind of black bog. After determining the bog was both poisonous and acidic, our group resolved to fly over the area, but staying beneath the foggy clouds overhead, after Rylan was quick to note that hostile creatures live both in and above this region. Our heroes fly for hours, but as they tire, they finally land on a rocky island. Unfortunately, they happen to have accidentally stumbled into the territorial pack of infernances, lizard-like dragon creatures that breathe acid and fire. As they fend off against this pack of wild beasts, our party encounters a huge void jellyfish that seems to be more curious about the commotion. After Trixie gathered that it wasn't hostile, Trixie named the jellyfish Gary, and decided to sit on his dome and fly on him. Convincing the rest of the party to join, our heroes rode on the back of a dark flying jellyfish over the rest of the bog. Finally arriving at the opposite shores, our group quickly finds the location of the Heart, located in a split mountain peak, a grotesque sphere of chaos vines and crystalline structures that target anything that moves. Thinking quickly, Trixie tunnels under the surface and gets the party below the massive Heart, where they crawl through a slimy space, following chaos tendrils until they find an entrance that leads to the inside of the Craze Heart, a sprawling and twisting mega dungeon. Exploring further, and met with a plethora of random effects, including more wild magic surges, card draws from the deck of many things, and even chaotic combat, our heroes explore the strange interior of the Craze Heart. Finally, when the party discovers that the Void Rift lies nearby, Rylan says her goodbyes, and her task is complete. As she turns to leave, magenta eye slits look back. Could she have been? No, that can't be. No way. The moon? Who knows? But what we do know is that we must push further into the Craze Heart to find the Void Rift we are looking for. And we dive deeper and deeper into the Craze Heart. The glorious bastards face tougher and even wilder monsters than before. During a combat, Kulias and Varen fall through a roof of a room in this mega dungeon. Who knows what they have gotten themselves into prior, but at least they are alive. Fighting a Shroomorg, another anomaly, an Arachan elephant, and a Carnogeist before finally finding the Void Rift. After what feels like countless battles and countless hours, our party trudges forward with some of their resources heavily depleted, now in the dark of the void, with no light and only a faint echo that stretches out for an infinite distance around. Our party searches for Decohn. After walking around in the darkness, a booming voice questions who these mortals are, and more importantly, why have they come to this place? Trying to explain themselves and their mission from Lycree, this entity, of whom they find out to actually be Decohn himself, is cut off when another voice interjects, saying, Decohn, I have found you. I am here to bring destruction to the Destroyer. Stepping from the shadows of the void, an unknown entity steps inward, one that looks half humanoid, but also something half far worse. These two entities, the unknown and Decohn himself, enter a full-on duel between each other, and our mortal heroes are caught in the crossfire. Uragar is punted like a football, hundreds of feet away, and is barely alive as the rest of the group collects themselves and prepares to manage their survival attempt from this divine duel. When Decohn calls out in frustration, just as Rhaedram is recognizing who this other entity is, Decohn shouting, Metasailus! Our party is met with a grave realization. The one responsible for all the enemies we have seen so far, one that has existed since before the Great Centrum Wars, is here, right now. When Decohn is unable to damage Metasailus like he should be able to, he conscripts the party's aid. Metasailus, on the other hand, seems largely unaffected by the mortal presence, and spends most of his time focused solely on Decohn, and some ancient and incredibly powerful ritual that only Trixie can see with the Oculi Nictus. While the party, with Decohn and the help of a ancient lunar dragon that Trixie called using a codex from the cosmos, they are able to fell Metasailus. But it is not until right after he had completed this ritual, and Trixie was the only one to watch chain-like whips of arcane energy reach into the being of Decohn and pull out arcane sigils from an ancient language older than the planes of existence themselves. Whatever he came to accomplish, he did. As he walked away, being killed by the party, the corpse of Metasailus falls to the ground, and it melts into a pile of snow and water, revealing it to be a simulacrum of the real Metasailus, not the true one. Additionally, a necklace around the simulacrum that the simulacrum of Metasailus was wearing, with a pink stone, cracks and then shatters on the ground of the void. Turning now to Decohn, him being saved, but definitely affected by whatever Metasailus just did to him, our party searches for an answer, much like Decohn is. Now left alone in the void with Decohn, our heroes can see the deity is visibly agitated and upset, reeling from pain from whatever the Dark One did to him. Decohn, in anger, turns to the group, questioning them why have they come, and comments how they are responsible for leading Metasailus right to him. The party explains that Lycree sent them, but Decohn and the group quickly realize that this situation is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. By coming here, they have put him in a position where Metasailus could follow them and find Decohn. Decohn, acting quickly, takes the group to see Magnus on the lost island of time. A series of critical revelations are made here, including Magnus saying that he has manipulated time in a way to bring the glorious bastards together to fight Metasailus, because the endless gods cannot really do anything to him, but mortals empowered by divine energy can. We learn more about Metasailus' entry into existence, the product of an affair between a Multum goddess and an endless god, an error and a mistake in the divine hierarchy that creates a host of problems. Varen departs from the group, and Decohn and Magnus each resolve to gather allies. The party, however, is given specific instructions by the Lord of Time, and he returns them to Sunshine City, where they left. Trixie quickly receives a message from Sparks, wondering if she is still alive, and the party heads to Belterris to answer an agitated Sparks by teleport, where they get caught in a strange, energical vortex before the spell finally pushes through. Here, the group learns about a vast array of new issues, including wild arcane surges, strange weather patterns, and an economy on the brink of ruin. They also learn that while they were in the plane of chaos for what to them was only a week or so, it has actually been well over 70 days since our heroes were on the material plane, and a lot has happened in that time. Esmeen failed to invade Bupilisu, but left ruin and destruction in that wake. Our party also encounters Detective Dexter, who, though by some random method, knows the location of Convergence Point, which is where the party needs to go after they head to High Beach to deliver a strange crystal given to them by Magnus to one Falaria Quinlan. Our party spends a day or so reaching out to as many allies as they can, seeking aid from friends, deities, organizations, and the like, hoping to gather a force strong enough to stand against Metasailus. But in the meantime, we head to High Beach in Esmeen, and arriving at an OTS base, we meet Sigilcaster Ulurea, who gives direction to find Falaria, a ship captain and fisherman. It is also here that we celebrate the Festival of Wintertide, a day of festivities and gift-giving. Nyx makes an amazing feast, and the party takes a moment to reflect on all they have endured together, how close they have become, and how one final task now stands in front of them. When they head out to meet Falaria Quinlan, delivering the crystal that Magnus requested them to, Falaria prepares to take these people out to sea and set sail for the elusive Convergence Point, of which Detective Dexter is able to give some direction. Trixie and Falaria install the time crystal into the hull of the Boadicea, Falaria's ship, and we head out to sea. Rayudrum feels very queasy as arcane Nexus lines surge. The surges streak through the ocean and another across the sky. Rayudrum comments that he feels the lightweight connection that he is connected to collapsing, and due to a sheer amount of stress, he faints. The time crystal activates from this surge and launches the entire ship through a time gate across the sea, condensing a 3-month journey into just about 3 days. When the Boadicea exits the time gate, we find ourselves amidst massive sea swells and a raging thunderstorm with no rain. But that proves to be less concerning when 2 dragons attack the ship, though the party comes up with a less conventional mean of concluding the combat. More questions now arise, and the Boadicea runs aground on a sandbar in the middle of what should be a miles-deep ocean. That concludes this recap of the Quest of Desolation. We'll see you next time.